Week 3 of the NFL season officially in the books. The Buffalo Bills are rolling, and big trouble for the Cincinnati Bengals. They have history now against them at 0-3. Can we bury those 0-3 teams? A lot of injuries around the NFL as well. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks to everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all the everydayers out there that are subscribed up, and new listeners. Hit that subscribe button so you can hang out with us every day here talking NFL football on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet at FanDuel, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's start with the Buffalo Bills, who at home, visiting Jaguars, just destroyed them, just thumped them from snap 1 through snap 70. I don't know how many snaps there were, but everything was working for the Buffalo Bills. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in trouble. We're going to talk about some 3-0 and 0-3 teams here. And, I'm kind of more focused on the Bengals 0-3 start. For some reason, it just seems like they're in a worse place versus what expectations were. There's a lot of expectations for the Jaguars as well, but I just think it's a little bit more shocking to see what happened with the Bengals against a team like the Commanders on Monday Night Football than it was for the Jaguars, who were, it was pretty clear the Bills were, the favorites in this one and playing some good football to start the season, unlike the Jaguars. So a lot to break down here. And we probably, is it too early after 3 weeks to start talking about Josh Allen as maybe the front runner for the MVP of the National Football League after 3 weeks, Matt?
No, I don't think that's too early at all. I mean, it's not like he came out of nowhere. He's got a pretty good track record and a lot of offensive changes that are very much working out. That was going to be one of my first questions to you is, are you comfortable with his pass catchers yet or getting there, or what do you think?
It's kind of like it doesn't matter anymore. So
right.
After 3 weeks, I would say, man, Josh Allen it's receiver proof. Develop the guys you have. Maybe you add some other guys. Maybe if it tends to not, it starts to not work out for you. Maybe you could trade for a guy. Like, don't worry about it. Is the way I feel like he is good, man. And it's kind of like Matt LaFleur. I'm like, man, this guy's got to be coach of the year because young offense, receivers, quarterback, it almost doesn't matter anymore. And so, like, for me, I've been so blown away by, and look, we already knew Matt LaFleur was a good coach. We already knew Josh Allen was a good quarterback, but just the early goings this year, it's like, hey, these guys are just phenomenal. So that's my early coach of the year, early MVP, kind of too early. I don't know. It's after 3 weeks, but such a phenomenal job these guys have done. And it's like, you get to the point where like, I don't care anymore. These guys are good, and I'm not worried about the weapons because clearly they've proven it doesn't matter that much. And, the Josh Allen, we always talk about how Stephon Diggs helped out Josh Allen so much, and I think he did. But, I think he helped the other way as well. It's not like, oh, man, Josh Allen needed, and at a certain point in his career, he probably did need that true number one wide receiver. He doesn't anymore. And it's phenomenal to watch him operate. And they've got different guys doing different things, and I think they could be better at wide receiver, but clearly it doesn't matter for Josh Allen.
Yeah, they're balanced. They use a 6 offensive linemen a lot. I think they're finally embracing the city they live in, that they can play small ball or grind it out or, go down and score 5 touchdowns on the first 5 drives, or at least it was 5 scores. I know the first 4 were touchdowns. I mean, it was embarrassing.
Right. And how many different ways can they beat you? Because he can beat you with his legs too. He can beat you with his arm to every level of the field. They can run the ball. James Cook, first of all, Josh Allen led the team in rushing, but James Cook took the first touchdown in. And so it's just, they can beat you in so many ways there. And Josh Allen can just put up 4 touchdowns like nothing. And he can throw them and he can run them in himself and you can hand it off. And it's just even with a young receiver group, an unproven receiver group, Khalil Shakir giving you something after the catch, James Cook out of the backfield. Kincaid hasn't even really, he had a touchdown catch in this one, but really hasn't gotten going. I thought he might be the fantasy stud for that offense this year, but just spreading it around. And there's a little bit of something for everybody there in that offense, and someone's going to get the football because Josh Allen's good and he's going to find you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think they're in contention right now for best offense in the league. I mean, through 3 weeks, they really haven't slowed down at all. I mean, I think it's been a powerhouse on that side of the ball. And I would say they're probably a top 10 defense or so. I mean, comfortably, maybe even better than that, which leads me to Jacksonville, though, too. Like, I understand that they had a lot of secondary injuries, and it's hard to get over those things. But the defense just wasn't competitive at all. And they're kind of in the bottom tiers of defense and offense. And I think Lawrence deserves to be on the hot seat. I've been a defender of his for some time, but this year seems worse than ever. And I look at the Bears and I look at the Jags and think, are those coaches' seats the hottest right now, midseason?
Yes, they absolutely are. The Jaguars' seat has to be the hottest.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so here's the thing
too,
is Trevor Lawrence and his expectations, it does feel like he gets a pass, and I thought it was a deserved pass. Does that pass stop? And is he getting is that, have we blamed everything on the coaches and not enough on Trevor Lawrence so far?
Yeah, and we got a tweet, and I've actually had this conversation with a lot of people. James D sent us a tweet saying, look at the difference between Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence. And really, there is no difference statistically, over their stats. I mean, Jones has played 63 games. Lawrence has played 53. Yards per attempt are about the same. Yards per game. Interceptions are both high. TD to interception ratios almost identical. I mean, so is it fair to have him in the Daniel Jones category? I mean, watching the tape and watching the All-22, I would prefer Lawrence over his career, but I think this might be the worst year of his career so far. And he overthrows that one pass badly and ends up in a pick, and a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes for Lawrence in his career.
Yeah, we'll probably have to talk about that a little bit more because I do have more thoughts on that specific in our mailbag this week. Get those questions into at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. And look, I think if you said, "Hey, Brian Daboll, we can trade Daniel Jones for Trevor Lawrence," and he'd be like, "Yes, please."
Yeah,
that's probably where I go with that, first of all. But again, just on, is that on merit or not? I mean, it's worth asking the question at this point. And I think it's working, like, it's all working against itself. And it's the opposite thing that's happening in Buffalo, because it's really the opposite thing that's happening around the NFL, where these good coaches are getting good play out of their players. I mentioned Matt LaFleur, O'Connell, Tomlin. There's more that I was thinking of this Sunday, just watching these football games, and good coaches are getting better quarterback play. And
Darnold's a great one.
Yeah, I mean,
Darnold and Fields
is
right.
developing all of a sudden. You're like, hey, who knew?
Oh, that happened, right?
Coach a little bit and improve from what we've seen before, and then you start to look at the Chicago Bears, and you're like, well, wait a second now, okay, is this going to happen again with the Bears? Right? And so,
as everyone knows, they haven't had a quarterback in either of our lifetimes or anyone's lifetime that knows how to listen to a podcast. And sometimes you have to say, is it me or is it you?
Yeah. So yeah, and I do think quarterbacks do get ruined, and a young quarterback could, and it takes time to undo that ruining as well. It's not easy to be a young quarterback in the NFL. And you look at Darnold's early career, you look at Baker Mayfield and what he's doing now, and then you look at someone like Bryce Young. It's like, well, he's just going to get tossed aside now because the veteran quarterback is functional, and he wasn't. And you can't go back to the rookie or the second year player. You can't go back to the young player when everyone's trying to save their jobs and not get fired, and players are trying to operate and do their thing and put up statistics and get paychecks as well. And so it is difficult to develop a quarterback in this league. And
Certainly.
I would point to organizational failures before Lawrence.
First and foremost, yeah.
At some point, you're supposed to be a generational talent and rise above it a little bit. And we've got a blowout where it's Mac Jones versus Mitch Trubisky in the fourth quarter. Like that's not a good situation with the Jacksonville Jaguars, no matter who you're pointing your finger at.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about Jayden Daniels in the next segment. I mean, he's very intriguing. He's going the other way, of course. But just looking at the rookie quarterbacks, I mean, at least Nick started out so bad this year. And in week 3, it looked like a light turned on a little bit. Like at least you're seeing progress. It's not massive. But the Bears, on the other hand, I watched a lot of that game because the Colts are the Steelers' next opponent. So I've been kind of studying what happened there. They have no running game. The offensive line was flat out bad. They might have the worst starting center in the league. Like instead of going out and getting Keenan Allen and certainly DeAndre Swift, maybe you should have got some nuts and bolts of the offense, because asking Caleb Williams to throw the ball, I think it was like 56 times, was a losing proposition. He was getting hit a ton, and he put up numbers, but it wasn't pretty and it wasn't a good formula.
At Williamson NFL saying that they should have drafted Graham Barton instead of Roma Dunze is what I'm hearing. So anyway, we got to move on to the other Monday Night Football. Jags playing bad. We'll talk later. Should we bury these 0-3 teams? Bills playing good, to put that simply, very simply, from what we saw on Monday Night Football. Two teams going in opposite directions right now. What about the Commanders and the Bengals next? Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team, not only faster, but for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, because those professionals in 70% of the cases aren't somewhere else. They're not looking for jobs on job boards, but they are on LinkedIn. So they might not be actively searching, but ready to find the job that's the perfect role for them, which might be your role. So put it in front of those potential job seekers that aren't actually seeking for jobs and the ones who are on LinkedIn. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, and they have all kinds of resources to help you hire, because they know that small businesses are wearing so many hats, you might not have all the time and resources. So find an easier way to hire for free at LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. This one was a more surprising events, I think, for me, and where the Bengals are right now as a football team at 0-3. And the Washington Commanders went into Cincinnati and beat them 38-33. And even in the second half, we're like, okay, here comes the Bengals comeback. And the Commanders were able to weather that. And it turned into a little bit of a shootout, 38-33, the final score there, as the Washington Commanders at 2-1 now, and the Bengals 0-3. Nobody predicted that start for these two teams over the first 3 games.
Yeah, and again, box score scouting can be very misleading. So if I told you Burrow threw 3 touchdowns, 324 yards, they didn't turn the ball over once, they had 124 on the ground, Jamar Chase was back as a big impact player, 2 touchdowns, 118 through the air, I'm like, well, they'd probably beat the Commanders by 20. And that
If you went to any Bengals fan, you're like, okay, here we go. Burrow, 324 and 3 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, here we go. 118 yards, 2 scores. Take it or leave it. Bengals fans 100% of the time be like, yep, let's go. Let me take that. And you look up the scoreboard and you're like, wait a second, 38-33?
And I give Washington all the credit in the world. Like, I still think they're a year away, or maybe even a year away from being a year away, but they seem to have a coach, a culture, and a quarterback. And sticking with the Bengals, I don't know if their defense is fixed from last year. Like everyone blamed the safety turnover, but I think they lose in the trenches consistently against a bad offensive line. Their run defense is problematic for me. Other than Hendrickson, I'm just not seeing impact players on defense. And might be a problem all year. I don't know that this is super correctable on that side of the ball.
And look, yeah, Burrow and Chase, and if Chase is kind of now going and we're good there, and you get T. Higgins back, like that's going to be fine for them. That's not where their problem is going to lie. But if the rest isn't better than what it's been, then they are going to be in trouble the rest of the year, and they're already in a really bad spot to start. So how much better can it get from what we've seen there on the defensive side of the ball for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah,
and, you had a rookie quarterback come in and put up 38 on you in your house.
And he looks really good doing it. I mean, so I just pulled this up because I knew he was near the top. But just pure completion percentage, Jayden Daniels is leading the league. I mean, he's completing 80.3% of his passes. Josh Allen's next at 75%. I mean, which is amazing to be 75% completion percentage. And he's at over 80. And he's doing a lot of things well. His accuracy overall shocks me a little bit, but his poise in the pocket is really good. When he feels pressure, he doesn't force things. He usually just runs, and he's very effective doing so. He's got a really low, I want to double check this one too, time to throw. His time to throw is only behind Tua. I mean, he's at 2.43 seconds. It's coming out, and it's accurate, and they're not super high degree difficulty throws, but he throws a good deep ball, and he doesn't shy away from that aspect of it. But again, it kind of goes back to what you said to start the show. I think a lot of it's just coaching and managing and bring him along to fit his strengths.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job of being smart, and they're getting the ball in quick, short throws, and I can't even. He had 2 incompletions in this game. He missed Terry McLaurin early in the game, was one of the incompletions, and that's, they're not throwing the ball deep a lot. They did take a couple of shots in this game, but they're getting the ball out of his hand quick and utilizing the talent that they have on offense and utilizing his legs. He carried the ball 12 times in this game as well, and besides one 24-yard run from Austin Eckler, they averaged about 2 yards a carry. And so it's not like they're running all over him, but Jayden Daniels extending drives, extending plays with his legs. They had 3 rushing touchdowns, even though they weren't really running the ball all that well. But they're being smart with how they develop their young quarterback. So yeah, good on Cliff Kingsbury and the Washington Commanders for, Cliff Kingsbury might be able to coordinate an offense in the NFL. Wasn't a great head coach, but and really there's a lot of similarities with what the Washington Commanders are doing right now and the Arizona Cardinals that Cliff used to coach. And I'm kind of interested. I'm like, they've got my attention, Washington and Arizona both.
And I thought it was really encouraging to get Terry McLaurin back involved. I mean, he has to be your one. He hasn't been to this point. I mean, I still look at much of their defense and the offensive line and maybe even another receiver now and think they're a little bit lax on talent. But they're 2-1, and the quarterback is playing well. I mean, that in itself is a successful season,
Rookie Johnny Newton getting involved a little bit. He's been injured to start his career. And so, they're good in the middle of the defensive line, at least, is that Washington Commanders team. And obviously I think the defense is not going to quite be there, but that's why I'm comparing them to the Arizona Cardinals a little bit. It's like, okay, I'm interested. Like they're not ready for prime time. Well, they just won in prime time, so maybe they are ready for prime time. I guess I can't say that.
Yes, there's evidence to the contrary of that. Yeah.
They're pieces away, and you like the direction they're going, I think is the best way to put it.
I 100% agree. I didn't see this coming from Washington. It's only 3 games, and I'm sure attrition through the season will deplete the roster as it does every team, but they may not be able to handle that. But, I mean, again, if you have a coach, a quarterback, and a culture, it's a pretty good start.
It's a great start. Yeah. Coaching, quarterback, and culture. I mean, that's the league. That is the NFL. It shouldn't be the NFL. It should be CCQ. Right?
Yeah, the Q screws you
up. Anyway, so should we start? Let's save this. So we got to talk about the 0-3 teams, and obviously we've already talked about 2 of them, the Jaguars and the Bengals. And let's go through this. And do we bury all of these 0-3 teams because history, Matt, is not on their side?
It really is.
This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And there's a reason FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and that's because you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets at FanDuel.com or in the FanDuel app. And new customers right now at FanDuel can get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And it doesn't matter if you win or lose on that first $5 bet. Get an extra $200 to play with. Bet on all the weekly lines at FanDuel. Tons of prop bets. Who's going to win the next Super Bowl? Who's the next coach that's going to get fired? Every game, every sport, you can find it all at FanDuel. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com or download the app. Again, that is FanDuel.com. All right, let's go through these two teams. The Cincinnati Bengals, 0-3.
I want to start there. Well, okay, good. No, never mind.
You know what? Hold on. Let me lay this out first before we go
Yeah.
there. So, but here are the 0-3 teams that have made the playoffs since 1990. So for a lot of people, it's their entire lives or
pretty good sample size.
Never been watching football. These are pretty much the teams that have. In fact, hold on. Let's see. We're going to go back further. We're going to go back to 1980. And since 1990, only 4 of 162 teams that started 0-3 made the playoffs.
Wow.
And only one team has done it since 2000. And that was the Texans, the Bill O'Brien Texans. And clearly they didn't win the Super Bowl that year, but
I think they were like 9-8 or something too.
Yeah, that was the 2018 Texans. They rattled off 9 straight wins after going 0-3.
Wow.
In 2018. And they're one of them. So going back to 1981, the Jets started 0-3 and made it to and they were an AFC wildcard team. In 82, the next year, the Buccaneers. Again, there's an asterisk too to even find these teams. They were 5-4 and they're a wild card team in a strike shortened season in 1982. Then you go 10 more years. The Chargers in 1992 won the AFC West after going 0-3, ended up going 11-5, so only lost 2 more games the rest of the year. 1995 Lions 10-6 were a wild card team in the NFC. The 1998 Buffalo Bills 10-6 ended up being an AFC wild card team, and again those 2018 Texans 11-5. Won the South and only lost 2 games the rest of the year. And that's it. Those are the 0-3 teams that have made the playoffs.
Okay. Now, in the AFC, now we have the Bengals and Jags joining Tennessee. I am burying the Jags, but not the Bengals. And here's my logic why. Is 7 teams in the AFC are going to go to the playoffs. Same is true in the NFC. Buffalo, and here's the bottom line. Miami, Cleveland, and Jacksonville were teams I looked at as potential playoff contenders that I don't anymore. I can't imagine. Maybe they can turn things around, but I would be shocked with the Tua and Watson situation and what we saw from an 0-3 Jags team last night. I already have buried the Patriots as a playoff team, as well as the Titans, Broncos, and Raiders. So that doesn't leave many for 7 spots. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Chargers could be on the brink of extinction, as could the Colts. So that really only leaves the Bills, Jets, Steelers, Ravens, Texans make 5, Chiefs make 6. Bengals could be 7. You know, they're not that much different to me than the Chargers or Colts or whoever you come up with there.
Is the NFC is there more parity
better.
Or more mediocre? Are they better? There's just not as
better.
many bad teams because there's no 0-3 teams. There's only 2 3-0 teams.
Yeah, I think it's better. I think probably the best 2 teams in the league, again, I might do power ranks tonight, are probably Buffalo and Kansas City. But Kansas City, if they weren't the Chiefs and Mahomes and Reed, I might not even say that about the Chiefs. They're not playing like the best team in the league.
Well, they're just kind of getting remember, it's like, this is the year to beat them. Their offense is down. It's like, no, they're going to hoist Lombardi again.
Buffalo might be the best team in the league.
I would go Chiefs 1, Buffalo 2 right now today.
Okay.
With the way they're playing and what we know about them.
But I don't think there's really 7 playoff worthy teams in the AFC right now, where I definitely thought there was like 10 going into the season.
Here's the reason I am burying the Cincinnati Bengals at 0-3, Matt.
Okay.
And that is because mathematically, first of all, the Jaguars and the Titans have another team in their division that is also 0-3.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not looking up at a 3-0 team. And they're also not looking up at the Browns and Ravens in their own division. If the Jaguars win next week and the Texans lose, they're one game out of first place.
I suppose. I mean, I guess that makes sense. And back to my argument, could they get in the final 7 if they turn things around? Yes. But I meant to open the show. They're on an 8-game losing streak. I mean, they lost the last 5 of last year, too. Like, they haven't shown us glimpses of greatness in a long time.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It has been. There's serious questions. And to be honest with you, I'm burying all 3 of those teams because do we think that the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Titans, and I just listed all those seasons, you maximum can lose 3 more games the rest of the year and probably have to do something like lose maybe 2 games the rest of the year. Are those teams prepared to do that? The Titans for sure are not. Like, they're done.
They're not going 10-3.
The Jaguars haven't been better than the Titans. So do you expect that from them? And the Texans don't even have to be that good to run away with this division, I think. And unless you do some very big things, you're not going to win. You're not going to be in the conversation for the wild card spot. And are the Bengals going to not only go on a crazy tear? It's possible, but are they going to leapfrog all the teams in front of them, even in their own division? So I bury all 3 of those teams right now.
Yeah, Bengals basically have. I mean, all these teams have to go 10-3 the rest of the way, and that seems crazy talk. But I think the Bengals have the best chance of the group.
I'll agree with that.
I don't know that Burrow's been phenomenal, by the way. He's been good. His numbers were great, but I don't think he's as precise as he's been. Timing and accuracy.
And look, this isn't a high-level football analysis, but you got to get rid of the frosted tips too. The look is not working. It was a bad look.
Not pulling you off, dude. Right? Yeah.
It was not a good look when it was happening in like 1999. And it's still not a good look. 25,
especially if you're 0-3. I mean, it goes it goes back to Major League. Like, you can have fungus on your shower shoes if you're throwing 20 wins in the show, but you can't in the minors. Right?
Some big injuries around the NFL that we can talk about they're going to derail some teams. And we just saw how rough it was for the Chargers against the Steelers if you lose your bookend tackles. And it looks like they're not going to have them back for some time, especially Joe Alt. So according to Ian Rappaport, Joe Alt, right tackle for the Chargers, expected to miss some time with a sprained MCL. And then the left tackle, Rashawn Slater, it looks like he is not going to play. That is a strained pec. So not a torn pec, which is, I guess a strain is a partial tear, but they're not calling it a partial tear like we're hearing about some other injuries. It's a strained pectoral because a pec, if it's a torn pec, it puts you out for the year.
Over, yeah.
Yeah. And so
it was a bad week for pecs, by the way.
Yeah.
Bad week
for partial strains this week.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think there's Herbert news when we recorded this, but man, I thought he was highly, highly doubtful to play in that Steeler game. And then the smallest little thing totally derailed him. So it could be kind of the beginning of the end for the Chargers.
And then, by the way, Troy Fautanu, the other tackle for the other team, the Steelers in that game, the rookie, he's going to go. He's going to have surgery for a dislocated kneecap. So that means his rookie season's over, right?
They said he could be back for the playoffs. So he's going on season-ending IR. Heard it Friday in practice. It's not great.
No, that is not great at all.
We also have a Ragnow injury that he avoided a torn pec. And then your boy Hargrave's out for the year, right?
Yeah, it looks like Hargrave's going to be done for the year. He might. There hasn't been. Let me just double check. I don't think there's been an official designation of putting him on IR yet as of this recording, but that does not look good for Hargrave either. Another one of those partial tears, and so it's one of those where it's like, man, okay, maybe they make it back for the playoffs. Do you just put him on IR? Do you put him on IR with a designation to be able to return? And so that's sort of the questions with some of these guys that are going to be out at least a long time and maybe season-ending injuries.
A couple other ones I just dug up were it just happened. The Panthers are putting Adam Thielen on injured reserve. Eric McCoy's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks for the Saints. So there were some pretty decent injuries around the league this year. this week. Oh, and Trent Brown. That's what I want to talk about last night. That did not look good at all. The right tackle for the Bengals. I mean, I bet he's out for the year too. That was brutal. A torn patellar tendon for him. So it's Demarius Mims time.
Likely out for the season was the latest report on Hargrave, by the way, which is, and the 49ers had some struggles. In fact, Hargrave was the best defensive lineman on the field for the first half of the game against the Rams. And then there was some viral videos of him really playing like half-assed at the end of the game. And it was like, man, is he just gassed? What's going on here? No effort. And now you're realizing, oh, he's playing injured. Probably shouldn't even been on the field. So torn right triceps there for Javon Hargrave, and surgery, which means probably season over.
And we've kind of mentioned yesterday, I don't think the Niners quite have the D-line firepower we've been used to. You know, that's a big injury.
And they don't have depth either. Like they're going to have to make a move at D tackle, and I'm sure they'll bring in somebody that's on the practice squad at first. But that might be a team that's looking for reinforcements, as they did last year with Chase Young at the trade deadline.
That makes sense. There you have it.
All right. So kind of a lot of bad news in this podcast.
Yeah, not a lot of doom and gloom, unless you're the Bills.
Every team but the Bills and the Commanders.
Right. It was kind of a downer today. Yeah.
Get those mailbag questions in for this week's Peacock and Williamson Week 4 mailbag on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Make sure you subscribe while you are there. And thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Matt doing Locked On Dynasty, doing Locked On NFL at various times throughout the week. You're on Friday, right? On Locked On NFL with Wig?
Yeah, every Friday.
The new Locked On NFL, by the way, the Madman Tyler Rowland, and then the Barbershop, twice a day action there with Tony Wiggins. And of course, your team is covered right here every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.